The projector fan screamed like it was choking on dust, and the screen flickered, white, then blue, then settled into a satellite map that looked too clean to be real. Cold air poured from the vents hard enough to sting the skin at my wrists. The room smelled like burnt coffee and dry erase marker, the kind of scent that clung to uniforms after long briefings and longer silences. I sat in the back row where the lights were dimmer and the faces blurred. My hands rested flat on my notebook, fingers still. The pen lay perfectly parallel to the paper, as if straight lines could keep a life from drifting. At the front of the room, my father owned the space like it was built for him. General Arthur Neves didn't raise his voice to command attention. He didn't need to. 3 stars on his shoulders did the shouting for him. He stood beside the podium with one hand on the clicker, posture effortless, a practiced calm that made everyone else seem restless by comparison. Rows of officers faced him, O5s and O6, a few civilians with badges, men and women who'd flown in for this joint update and were now pretending the fluorescent lights didn't make their eyes ache. Laptops glowed. Pages turned. Boots tapped once, then stopped. Nobody moved too much when a 3-star talked. I didn't either. The badge on my chest read MAJ, Maya Neves, in crisp block letters. The last name was the problem. It always had been. Not because it carried weight, because it carried ownership, the kind my father believed he had a right to. He advanced a slide. The map shifted. Lines appeared. A timeline. "Here's the window," he said, voice smooth. "Here's the risk." His words landed clean, controlled. He looked like the face of certainty to everyone else. To me, he looked like a man performing a role he'd rehearsed for decades. Patriarch, commander, author of the narrative. A man who thought truth was whatever he said first in the room. He clicked again. A bullet list appeared. "Coordination is everything," he said. "We do this together." Together. That word tasted different in my mouth than it did in his. I kept my gaze neutral. I kept my face blank. I did what I'd learned to do in rooms where people wanted to use you. I became uninteresting. I had been briefed into this meeting under a simple cover: liaison support, a name on a roster, a body in a chair. My presence was required. My voice wasn't. That was fine. Silence was a skill. My father's eyes swept the room, collecting nods like trophies. He paused when he saw a colonel in the second row. He smiled. A small, public smile. Then his gaze drifted. Back row, shadows, the place where people sat when they didn't want to be seen. His eyes landed on me. It was subtle, a fraction of a second. But I felt it in my spine the way you felt a scope find you across distance, an invisible pressure that made every nerve go alert. He didn't flinch at recognizing me. He didn't soften. He didn't do the private thing of being a father. He did the public thing of being a general. His mouth curved with a faint contempt that passed as humor if you wanted to keep your job. "Well," he said, letting the room breathe with him. "I see we have family." A few heads turned. A few smiles appeared. Polite, curious, eager for anything that wasn't another slide. I didn't move. My father lifted his chin slightly, like he was deciding how much of me to reveal for his benefit. "She's my daughter," he said. His voice made it sound like a credential he'd earned. He pointed toward me with the clicker, not his finger. More elegant, more insulting. "She's here," he continued, "to observe." Observe. Not contribute. Not advise. Not serve. A couple of officers glanced back at me, trying to place me, a major with a familiar last name, a face that didn't react. My father let their curiosity marinate. Then he smiled again. "And before anyone asks," he said, "no, she's not here for anything critical." 7 words. Just under the line. Just sharp enough. A few people chuckled, the sound quick and contained, like they weren't sure it was safe to laugh but didn't want to miss the chance. Heat rose under my collarbone and stopped there. I didn't let it climb. I didn't come here to win affection. I came here to do what I always did. Sit still and let the mission stay clean. My father clicked to the next slide, still smiling. "Anyway," he said, "back to adults." 2 words landed like a slap. One laugh escaped somewhere in the third row, too loud, then died when the room remembered where it was. I kept my eyes on the screen. The map's grid lines were perfect. The real world never was. He moved into a discussion of assets and contingencies without ever saying anything classified enough to matter. That was his specialty, sounding important while keeping everything in the safe lane. He talked about capabilities and options, letting the words do the flexing. I took notes that looked like notes. Small, neat handwriting. Dates, acronyms. Nothing that meant anything to anyone reading over my shoulder. Because I had learned, the hard way, that privacy wasn't only about secrets, it was also about survival. My father paused mid-briefing to sip water. The bottle crinkled in the silence. He set it down carefully, as if even plastic should respect him. Then he looked at the front row. "Any questions?" he asked. Hands didn't shoot up. They never did in a room like this, not until someone else risked it first. Finally, a civilian analyst cleared his throat and raised 2 fingers. "General," he began, "do we have precision overwatch confirmed for—" My father cut him off with a palm lifted slightly. "We have what we need," he said. 6 words. Dismissive. Final. The analyst swallowed his question. My father's gaze flicked almost lazily toward me again. He didn't know what the analyst was asking for. He knew the posture of power. Deny, control, move on. He advanced the slide. I watched the room's unease tighten. People knew when something was missing, even if they didn't know what. Missing pieces made everyone anxious, and anxiety made people reach for certainty. My father fed them certainty like he was dispensing medicine. "Next," he said, "we'll address logistics." His eyes found me again as he said the word, like he couldn't resist turning it into a private joke. A couple of officers glanced back at me, then away, embarrassed by association they hadn't chosen. I didn't blink. I remembered another room years earlier when I'd learned what he did when he felt threatened. I had been 18, standing in my mother's kitchen with a recruiter's folder in my hands. The paper smelled like fresh ink and cheap plastic. My scores were printed in bold. My future looked like a door I could finally open. My father had barely looked at the folder. "Girls don't belong in combat," he'd said. 6 words, clean, believed. My mother had stared at the sink, hands wet with dishwater, and whispered, "Maya, please." Not for my safety, for peace. I had swallowed my anger then too. I had learned that pushing him didn't break him. It broke my mother. So I left quietly. I learned to be excellent in silence. I learned to take everything he refused to give me, respect, acknowledgement, space, and forge it into something useful. Somewhere along that path, I became good at being unseen. So good that even now, wearing a uniform, carrying rank, sitting in a joint briefing room, my father could still reduce me to a punchline and feel safe doing it. He thought my silence meant he'd won. It didn't. It meant I was patient. My father clicked through another slide. "We'll coordinate with supporting elements," he said. "We'll maintain the timeline." Timeline, supporting elements. Clean words for messy realities. The room settled into the rhythm of listening. Then a captain in the second row raised a hand, young, eager, too brave. "Sir," the captain said, "if we lose comms in the first—" My father smiled without warmth. "Then we don't lose comms," he said. 5 words. The room laughed lightly again, relieved at being told the problem didn't exist. I tasted metal. The captain's hand lowered. His shoulders tightened. People stared at their laptops. My father turned his head toward me as if he'd remembered I existed again, and something in his eyes sharpened. Jealousy disguised as amusement. "What do you think?" he asked. The room startled. Heads turned. A few people looked pleased, like they were about to watch a father kindly invite his daughter into the family business. They didn't know him. My father didn't ask because he wanted my input. He asked because he wanted to watch me hesitate. He wanted to prove in front of witnesses that I didn't belong. I could have answered the safe way. A nothing answer, a polite echo. But I didn't owe him performance, so I chose the cleanest line possible. "It depends," I said. 2 words. Neutral. True. A ripple of discomfort moved through the room. It depends was what people said when they weren't playing. My father's smile froze. On what? He asked. 3 words. Tight. I looked at the map on the screen, not at his face. On conditions, I said. 2 words, still neutral. My father's nostrils flared almost invisibly. He took a small step toward the podium like he was reclaiming the floor. Major, he said, voice silky. This isn't your lane. 6 words. A few officers shifted in their chairs. The air felt colder. I kept my hands folded. I kept my posture still. Yes, sir, I said. 2 words. A retreat that wasn't a retreat. My father's eyes narrowed. He wanted more. He wanted resistance. He wanted a scene. He didn't get one. He leaned forward slightly, just enough for the room to hear the cut without it sounding like a shout. Sit down, he said. 2 words. I didn't move because I was already sitting, but he said it anyway. Because humiliation wasn't about correcting posture. It was about asserting dominance. A couple of people laughed. Nervous, small, automatic laughter that tried to make it normal. Then my father added the line he'd been holding like a match. You're a nobody, he said. 4 words. The room went still. Not respectful still. Shock still. The kind of stillness that made the hum of the projector fan suddenly loud again. The kind of stillness that turned the clicker in his hand into a weapon. I felt my heartbeat once in my throat, then it settled back down into my chest where it belonged. My face stayed composed. I didn't defend myself. I didn't correct him. I didn't look at my name tag as if it could argue with his mouth. I simply breathed, because this wasn't my first public erasure. It was only the most crowded one. My father turned away as if he'd finished a minor housekeeping task. He clicked to the next slide. His voice returned to his briefing cadence like nothing had happened. We'll proceed, he said. 2 words. Dismissal. And the room, trained to follow rank, tried to follow with him. Eyes returning to the screen, hands returning to keyboards, faces smoothing over discomfort like people smoothing wrinkles on a uniform. But something had changed. Not in me. In the room, because civilians and officers alike could feel cruelty when it slipped past professionalism. They might not challenge a 3-star, but they didn't forget what they saw. My father kept talking, trying to push the moment into the past by burying it under policy. I stayed still, hands folded, eyes forward. And in that stillness, I felt the old familiar shape of my life. I became invisible so the work could stay clean. I became quiet so someone else wouldn't get hurt. I became small so someone else could feel large. It had been a strategy. It had also been a wound. A door handle turned somewhere behind us. Metal clicked. The briefing room door opened, and a slice of hallway light cut across the carpet like a blade. Boots entered. Fast, purposeful. Not Air Force dress shoes. Not the careful steps of a staffer bringing paperwork. Combat boots. A man in desert camo moved into the room with the kind of urgency that didn't ask permission. His presence changed the oxygen. His eyes scanned the rows like he was counting lives, not ranks. My father stopped mid-sentence, irritation already rising. Who the hell, he began. The man didn't even look at him. He looked past the podium, past the stars, and said to the room in a voice that carried like a signal flare, I need your ghost. Now. The first time I understood what my father wanted from me, it wasn't in a briefing room. It was at our dining table under a chandelier that smelled faintly of lemon polish and old money. My mother had set out place cards for a fundraiser dinner, names in looping ink, silverware aligned like soldiers, while my father practiced a toast in his head without moving his lips. I was 16, still growing into my shoulders, still believing families told the truth inside their own walls. A guest asked my father about me, smiling politely. And your daughter? My father didn't look at me. He looked at my mother, then at the guest. She's shy, he said. 2 words, a verdict. My mother's hands tightened around the serving spoon. She didn't correct him. She never did in front of outsiders. Her silence was the price she paid to keep the house quiet later. I had wanted to argue. I had wanted to say, I'm not shy, I'm here. But I watched my mother's face, tight, careful, and I swallowed it. That was how it started. Not with a fight, with a choice I made because I loved her more than I loved being accurately described. Years later, when I pinned on my first rank, I understood my father hadn't mistaken me. He had curated me. General Arthur Neves wasn't a loud man at home. He didn't need volume. He controlled with a raised brow, with timing, with the way the entire house held its breath when his keys hit the entry bowl. When I told them I'd been accepted into ROTC, my mother's eyes brightened with the kind of hope she never let herself show around him. My father's mouth didn't move much. No, he said. One word. Clean. It's a scholarship, I replied. He set his coffee mug down with a soft click. Ceramic on wood. Small sound. Absolute message. No, he repeated. My mother stood by the sink, hands in soapy water. The kitchen smelled like dish soap and roasted garlic. She didn't turn around. She just whispered, Maya, not a protest, a plea. I looked at my father. Why? One word, and his eyes sharpened like I'd insulted him. Because you'll embarrass us, he said. 5 words. Quiet cruelty. I waited for him to explain. Some fatherly concern, some logic that made sense. He didn't offer it. He didn't need to. He believed his authority was explanation enough. Later that night, my mother came to my room. The hallway light behind her made her a silhouette. Small, tired, trying. She smelled like her lavender lotion, the scent she used when she couldn't sleep. Please, she whispered. Don't make him angry. I stared at my bedspread and felt something settle in me, something hard and calm. Mom, I said, I'm not making him anything. She flinched as if honesty was dangerous. I kept my voice soft. I'm going. 2 words. My mother's eyes filled, but she didn't argue. She just nodded once, like she was watching a door close and couldn't stop it. That was my first lesson in service. Sometimes you leave to keep yourself intact. My father called it disobedience. My mother called it heartbreak. I called it breathing. Mini turn. The day I shipped to training, my father didn't hug me. He stood in the driveway with a coffee mug in one hand and the morning paper in the other, pretending I was a neighbor's kid leaving for college. My duffel bag smelled like new canvas and cheap detergent. The air outside bit with winter cold. My mother cried quietly on the porch, trying not to let him see. I stepped toward him anyway. I'm going, I said. He didn't look up. Don't come back expecting praise, he replied. 6 words. Controlled. Cutting. I nodded once, a copy. 1 word, not sarcastic, just a boundary in his language. His eyes flicked up then, surprised that I'd answered like a soldier already. He hated that. He hated that I could match his world without his permission. Training didn't make me reckless. It made me precise. It taught me to control my face, my breath, my voice. It taught me to take chaos and turn it into sequence. And somewhere between my first field problem and my first deployment, I learned the skill that would define my career. I learned how to be present without being visible. Civil military operations needed that. You couldn't walk into a fragile community overseas with rank blazing and ego loud. You listened first. You let locals keep their dignity. You made solutions feel like the community's idea, not your victory. I was good at it. Too good. Because when I came home on leave, my father used that same invisibility like it belonged to him. At his retirement ceremony, before he unretired into another appointment, he stood at a podium and thanked his mentors, his peers, his support system. My mother sat in the front row, smiling too brightly. I sat 2 rows back in uniform, hands folded. He never said my name. Afterward, a colonel shook my hand and said, "Must be proud." I kept my face calm. "Of the mission," I said. 3 words. The colonel nodded like he understood. He didn't. My father found me by the punch bowl and leaned close, the smell of whiskey and cologne sharp in the air. "You're here to be seen," he murmured. 6 words. I met his eyes. "I'm here to serve." 4 words. His mouth tightened. Not tonight, he said. 2 words. A leash. I didn't argue. I stepped back into the crowd and vanished again, because the alternative was a public scene that would turn my mother into collateral. That was the pattern. My father tried to own my voice. My mother absorbed the recoil. I learned to be silent in ways that still protected people. It wasn't noble. It was survival. Years later, in a different country, during a tense meeting between local leaders who didn't trust each other enough to share oxygen, a senior NCO pulled me aside. The room smelled like dust and hot metal, and outside, the sun pressed down like a hand. He spoke low. Ma'am, you move like a ghost. 5 words. I didn't smile. That's the idea, I replied. 3 words. From then on, the nickname stuck in my team, not as an insult, as a compliment. I could enter a room, shift a negotiation, prevent a firefight, and leave without anyone remembering which hand had turned the dial. Ghost work, invisible success. It suited me. It also gave my father a new weapon, because when your daughter's accomplishments are classified, it becomes easy for a powerful man to pretend she hasn't accomplished anything at all. Back home, he'd introduce me at dinners with a soft laugh. She does paperwork, he'd say. 2 words, then 1. Diminishing. A guest would nod sympathetically. My mother would stare at her plate. And I would sit there tasting the burn of swallowed truth. Not because I needed credit, because I hated what his story did to my mother. It taught her to see my service as absence, not purpose. It trained her to measure love by proximity instead of integrity. It made her ashamed of my distance because he told her distance meant abandonment. And she believed him because believing him kept the house quiet. Mini-turn. The year I made major, my father called me from a secure line, rare, surgical contact. His voice came through clean, cool, like he was reading from a briefing card. Congrats, he said. 1 word. Thank you, I replied. 2 words, a pause, then, don't use my name. 4 words, I went still. I don't. 2 words, he exhaled like I'd annoyed him. Good, he said. People will assume. 4 words, assume what? That I'd been promoted because I was his? That I'd earned nothing without his shadow? That my uniform was an accessory to his legacy? I didn't ask. I already knew. My father didn't fear my failure. He feared my independence, because if I proved I could stand without him, then his version of fatherhood, control as love, would look like what it was: insecurity in a dress uniform. So he kept me safe by keeping me small. He did it with jokes, with introductions, with the way he used public rooms to remind me where he believed I belonged. And I let him. Not forever, not because I was weak, because I had learned to choose the battlefield. The briefing room in the present had been one of those battlefields. Not because it was emotional, because it was crowded, because witnesses changed the cost of every word. When he called me a nobody, he wasn't only insulting me. He was warning the room. Don't look at her too closely. He was trying to protect something, not the mission. Himself. Because the operation he was briefing, the one with the clean map and the perfect timeline, wasn't his idea. He had inherited it, like he inherited everything that made him look competent. He didn't know the texture of it. He didn't know the fragile points. He was performing confidence over someone else's work. And I knew that work intimately because I'd built the civilian trust pieces, the local partnerships, the quiet agreements that made the window possible at all. Ghost work. His clicker advanced slides like he owned the story. My silence kept the story from collapsing. That was the wound I carried. Being useful enough to save outcomes, invisible enough to be erased. So when the door opened at the end of his briefing, when combat boots hit carpet with urgency, the sound sliced through my memories and snapped me back into fluorescent reality. The messenger hadn't looked at my father. He'd looked past the podium, past the stars, past the performance. I need your ghost, he'd said. Now, sitting in the back row, I watched my father's face tighten, just slightly, as if he'd heard a name he didn't want spoken out loud. The room was still, and for the first time in years, my invisibility wasn't a weakness. It was a resource someone needed badly enough to say it in public. The man in desert camo stood in the aisle with his hands empty and his urgency fully loaded. I need your ghost. Now. The words didn't sound like a request. They sounded like a missing piece finally named out loud. The room stayed frozen. Laptops stopped clicking. The projector fan whined harder, like it sensed tension. My father's clicker hovered midair in his hand, paused between slides, paused between realities. General Arthur Neves turned slowly, irritation sharpening his mouth. This is a secure brief, he said. Identify yourself. 8 words. Cold. Controlling. The man didn't flinch. Master Sergeant Klein, he replied, voice clipped. J39 liaison. 4 words, then 2. All business. My father's eyes narrowed. You're interrupting. 2 words, a warning. Klein's gaze didn't move to the stars. It moved to the room like he was counting who mattered. We're out of time, he said. 4 words. Final. A civilian at the front swallowed visibly. A colonel shifted, then stilled again. Nobody wanted to be the first person to acknowledge that a 3-star might not be in control of this moment. My father lifted the clicker slightly, reclaiming posture. You can wait outside, he said. 4 words, dismissive. Klein shook his head once. Need her now, he said. 3 words. My father blinked. Need who? 2 words, tight. Klein finally turned, scanning the rows. His eyes went straight to the back, straight to me, like he'd been given a map. There, he said, 1 word. A ripple ran through the room, heads turned. People looked at my badge as if it had changed. My father's gaze snapped to me, sharp enough to feel like a hand on my throat. His jaw flexed. No, he said, 1 word, absolute, familiar. Klein's eyes narrowed. Orders, he replied. 1 word. He didn't add sir. He didn't have time. My father stepped away from the podium half a pace, making the movement look casual, like he was simply repositioning. It wasn't casual. It was containment. Major Neves is an observer, he said. Not tasked. 7 words. Erasure with a ribbon. I stayed seated. Hands folded. Face neutral. Klein's mouth tightened. Ghost is tasked, he said. 3 words. And that call sign, ghost, landed like a match in dry grass. My father's expression twitched. A micro flicker of something too human for a public room. Fear of being exposed. Ghost isn't a person, he said quickly. It's a concept. 8 words. A lie designed to sound like expertise. Klein didn't argue. He reached into his cargo pocket and pulled out a folded paper sealed in a clear sleeve. He held it up without stepping closer, like he understood rank but didn't worship it. Tasking memo, he said. 2 words. My father's eyes darted to the sleeve, then to the room, then back to me by. He could feel witnesses assembling meaning around his refusal. He forced a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Hand it to my aide. 5 words. Control by procedure. Klein didn't move. Needs her signature, he said. 3 words. The room went quiet again, thick, watchful. The moderator of this world wasn't a town hall chair, it was hierarchy, and hierarchy was suddenly unsure whose lane this was. My father's voice softened, dangerous. Sit down, he said toward me. 2 words. I was still already sitting, but the message wasn't about posture, it was about obedience in public. I lifted my chin a fraction. I spoke without heat. I have orders, I said. 3 words. My father's smile vanished. His voice dropped into something meant to cut without sounding loud. From who? 2 words. Klein answered for me. J39, he said. And the field. 4 words. My father's clicker tightened in his hand. The plastic creaked faintly. He turned to the room, trying to salvage authority with performance. We will address this later, he said. We're mid-brief. 8 words, a stall tactic. Klein's response was immediate. Later is casualties, he said. 3 words. And the air changed because everyone in that room understood what casualties meant. A colonel in the front row finally spoke, careful. General, what's the situation? 6 words, respectful but real. My father's eyes flashed annoyance at being questioned. He pivoted toward the screen like it could protect him. We're maintaining timeline, he said. 4 words. Empty. Klein didn't let emptiness breathe. Corridor collapsed, he said. Civilians blocking movement. 5 words. A civilian analyst's hands froze over his keyboard. Someone whispered, What corridor? Klein's gaze stayed on me. She can open it, he said. 5 words. My father's head snapped. She cannot. 3 words. Too sharp. The room heard the personal edge. A few faces tightened. The cruelty from earlier, you're a nobody, still hung in the air like smoke. Now it had context. Klein took 1 step forward, not aggressive, inevitable. With respect, he said, your brief isn't moving. 5 words. That was the first time I saw it. The room's loyalty wavered. Not because they loved me, because the mission was bigger than my father's ego, and even obedient people had a limit when reality pressed in. I rose slowly, chair legs scraped once, loud in the stillness. My father's eyes locked on me. His voice went soft again, deadly. Maya. 1 word, my name used like a leash. I didn't look at him. I looked at Klein. Where? 1 word. Klein exhaled like he'd been holding his breath for minutes. Ops center, he said. Now, 2 words. My father stepped into my path at the end of the aisle, blocking without touching. His smile returned. Thin, practiced. This is inappropriate, he said. 3 words. I kept my voice controlled. It's necessary. 2 words. His eyes narrowed. You're not cleared. 3 words. Another lie. Klein's voice cut clean. She's cleared. 2 words. My father's jaw clenched. He leaned closer, low enough that only I could hear. His breath smelled like mint and control. Don't embarrass me, he whispered. 3 words, the oldest command. I answered without raising my voice. Don't erase me. 3 words. He flinched, just slightly, because he hadn't expected me to name it. Then he straightened, turning the moment into something he could sell to the room. Go, he said, loud enough for witnesses. But you report to me. 7 words. Ownership reclaimed. I didn't correct him. I walked past him. Klein led the way out. Boots on carpet, then tile. The hallway light outside sliced into my eyes. Bright, sterile, smelling like floor wax and cold metal. Behind us, the briefing room door swung shut with a muted thump that felt like a chapter closing. My father's voice continued faintly through the wall, already resuming the brief as if my exit had been a minor administrative detail. That was his talent, continuing the story even when the truth left the room. In the ops center, the air was different, hotter, charged. Screens glowed with live feeds and maps. Radios hissed. Someone shoved a headset into Klein's hand. He pointed me toward an empty workstation. Ghost station, he said. 2 words. I sat, snapped the headset on and listened. Voices overlapped, frantic, clipped, layered with static. A woman's voice said, "They're refusing passage." A man said, "We're losing daylight." Another voice, thin, said, "If we push, it turns." I closed my eyes for half a beat, letting the noise organize itself into structure. Put local leader on, I said. 4 words. A tech hesitated. Ma'am, Klein cut in, do it. 2 words. The line clicked. A man's voice came through, angry, suspicious. Who is this? 3 words. I kept my tone calm. A friend of your town. 5 words. Silence, then a rough laugh. Liar. 1 word. I didn't argue. You know my voice. 4 words, a pause, breath, then quieter. Ghost? 1 word. Recognition. Yeah, I said. 1 word, and the room around me stilled slightly as if people sensed a lock turning. I began speaking in short, practical sentences, no speeches, no ego. Routes, guarantees, boundaries, dignity. I gave him what he needed to stand down without losing face, because that was how you opened corridors. You didn't defeat people, you gave them a way to choose peace. While I worked, Klein leaned close and slid a thin folder onto my desk. The folder smelled like fresh paper and toner. On the cover, a signature block glared up at me. Approving authority. Genoud A. Neves, my father's name. My stomach went cold, not from surprise, from clarity. He hadn't just tried to humiliate me. He still had a pen on the paperwork that could bury me again. Quietly, officially, with no witnesses. I kept my voice steady on the headset. I kept negotiating. But my eyes stayed on my father's signature. Black ink, sharp as a blade. And I understood the next battlefield was already forming. The headset foam pressed warm against my ear, and the ops center smelled like hot circuits and old coffee. Burnt, bitter, permanent. On the screen in front of me, the corridor map pulsed with red blocks and thin blue lines like veins under skin. Radios hissed in overlapping bursts. A tech's fingers flew over keys, the clatter sharp in the charged air. Every sound arrived with urgency, every second arriving already late. On my line, the local leader's breathing came through before his words, rough, angry, proud. "You want me to move my people," he said, "again." 5 words, the kind that carried history. I kept my voice low. "I want you to keep them alive." 9 words, no moralizing, just reality. A pause. The line crackled. Somewhere on his end, men were shouting in the background, tight, suspicious voices. I pictured it without trying. A street choked with bodies, an improvised barricade, a community refusing to be pushed by uniforms they didn't trust. "You think I trust you?" he said. 5 words. I didn't chase trust. I offered structure. "You trust the water," I said. "It will take whoever stays." 9 words. Silence, then quieter. "We're not weak." 4 words. Pride, not logic. "I'm not calling you weak," I said. "I'm calling this predictable." 10 words. The ops center behind me stayed loud, but my lane narrowed into one thing. Give him a way to choose de-escalation without humiliation. That was the only door that opened when fear locked everything else. Klein leaned over my shoulder, voice clipped. "Convoy has 5 minutes." 5 words. Pressure. I didn't look away from the screen. "Copy," I said. 1 word. On the line, the leader's voice sharpened. "What do you give me?" 5 words. The real question. I answered with what I'd learned to trade. Dignity. "You keep your flag," I said. "You move it first. We follow." 12 words. Klein's eyebrows lifted slightly. Approval without emotion. The leader's breath hitched. He understood what that meant. It meant I was letting him appear in control. It meant his people would see him lead, not comply. "You swear?" he asked. 2 words. I didn't swear. I didn't dramatize. "I'll do it," I said. 3 words. The line stayed quiet for 2 beats, 2 long beats. Then, "Fine," he said. 10 minutes? 2 words. A crack in the wall. I didn't celebrate. "I'll hold," I replied. 3 words. Klein straightened and barked to the room. "Update, corridor opening." 3 words. The ops center shifted like a machine catching the right gear. Radios chirped. A map overlay changed. Red blocks flickered. Mini turn. A different radio voice cut through, panicked. "We have movement, crowd surging." 5 words, sharp as a siren. I closed my eyes for half a beat and pictured the failure point. Once bodies move, they don't stop neatly. Not when fear is mixed in. Not when someone yells ambush and the rumor runs faster than truth. I leaned into my headset. "Leader," I said. "Walk slow, talk loud." 6 words. He spat something harsh in his language, then said in English, "You don't command me." 4 words. I kept my tone even. "I'm not commanding," I said. "I'm protecting your choice." 9 words. Another pause, then his voice came again, rougher but steadier. "We walk," he said. 2 words. The ops center exhaled around me, not as a sound, but as a shift. Less frantic, more focused. The map showed the first blue element nudging forward. I reached for the folder on my desk without opening it fully, just enough to see the signature block again. Gen A, Nev's black ink, clean authority, a pen that could erase me with a stroke. I slid the folder aside like it was radioactive, because if I looked at it too long, I'd start thinking about my father instead of the corridor. And the corridor didn't care about my family drama. The corridor cared about bodies. A tech leaned in, whispering, "Ma'am, you're on speaker in the adjacent room." 7 words. That meant people were listening. That meant my voice, my ghost voice, was no longer fully mine. I didn't change tone. I just became even more precise. "Convoy," I said into the radio net. "Match pace, no horns, no shouting." 9 words. A driver replied, "Copy, Ghost." 2 words that made the room's eyes flick briefly toward me. Ghost. A call sign wasn't a title. It was a function. It meant you had earned the kind of trust that didn't require applause. And now it was echoing in a building where my father was still pretending I was a nobody. The local leader's voice returned. "We're moving," he said. "They're watching." 4 words. "They can watch," I replied. "Let them see restraint." 7 words. A cough of static, then barely. "You sound like my sister." 6 words. Unexpected. I didn't ask. I didn't dig. "Then honor her," I said. 3 words. The line went quiet, then his voice came softer, almost unwilling. "Okay," he said. 1 word. A door fully open. Behind me, Klein muttered, "You're doing it." 3 words. I didn't answer. On the screen, the red blocks began thinning. The corridor's status ticked from denied to contested to passable. A convoy icon slid forward. My fingers loosened slightly on the edge of my desk. Then a different voice broke in, an officer on the operations net, tight and bright with urgency. "General Naves wants an update, now." 6 words. The air in the ops center tightened. Klein's jaw flexed. He leaned close to me, voice low. "He's trying to take it." 5 words. I tasted metal again. Familiar, controlled anger trying to rise. I kept it down. "Root him," I said. 2 words. The tech hesitated. "Ma'am, Klein cut in. "Rout him." 2 words harder. The screen in front of me split, and my father's face appeared on a secure video pane. Well lit, composed, the same controlled performance he wore like a uniform. Behind him, I could see the edge of the briefing room wall, the glow of the projector. He was still there, still talking, still pretending. "Maya," he said. 1 word, too intimate for the room, too owned. I didn't react. "Sir," I replied. 1 word, distance. His eyes flicked, annoyed at being forced into protocol. "Status," he demanded. 1 word, a command. I answered with clean facts. Corridor opening. Convoy moving. No contact. 7 words. He nodded once, performing calm for anyone watching his feed. "Good," he said. "I'm taking over comms." 5 words. Klein's head snapped up. My stomach went cold, not from fear, from calculation. If he took over, he would speak like a general. He would make the local leader feel dominated. The leader would lock down again. Bodies would pile up. Panic would spiral. My father would call it resistance. He would blame the locals. He would blame me. He would still look clean in the story. I kept my voice even. "Sir, keep Ghost Channel isolated." 6 words. His eyes narrowed. "No." 1 word. Mini turn. He leaned closer to his camera and his voice softened into something meant to humiliate without sounding loud. "You're done here." 4 words. The ops center went still enough that the hum of the air vents felt louder. Klein's fists tightened at his sides. The tech froze over the keyboard. Someone in the back whispered, "What the—" I didn't let it become a scene. I stayed calm. "Sir, you can't replace trust mid-contact." 8 words. My father smiled, thin. "Watch me." 2 words, then the line cut. Not the whole net, just my video pane. A blank square replaced his face. For a beat, the ops center didn't breathe. Klein's voice came sharp. "He blocked you." 3 words. I nodded once. "He tried." 2 words. The radios were still live, the local leader was still moving, the convoy was still rolling. My father had cut optics, he hadn't cut reality. I leaned into my headset again, voice steady, refusing to let his interference leak into my tone. "Leader," I said, "you're doing right. Keep pace." 8 words. His reply came through, breathless, tense, but moving. "We're halfway," he said. 2 words. "Good," I answered. "Hold the line." 4 words. Klein stepped closer, lowering his voice like it was a confession. "He'll sign you off mission." 5 words. My eyes flicked to the folder again, the one with his signature block. "I know," I said. 2 words. Klein's face tightened. "Then why stay?" 4 words. I didn't look up. "Because people are still in the corridor." 9 words. Klein exhaled through his nose like he'd been punched by that simplicity. On the map, convoy icons continued sliding through the narrowing gap. A timer in the corner counted down daylight. Then, in my left periphery, a small notification popped on the ops screen. Admin. Action. User removed. Ghost station. My throat tightened once. He'd done it. Paperwork translated into access. The headset in my hands didn't stop working yet, but I felt the system beginning to treat me like an intruder in my own role. Klein saw it too. "He's cutting your access." 4 words. I kept my voice low. "We only need 5 more minutes." 7 words. Klein glanced at the map. "You sure?" 2 words. I answered without drama. "Yes." 1 word. I kept the channel moving, kept the leader calm, kept the convoy disciplined. My voice became a narrow bridge laid over panic. "Left, slow, don't bunch," I said. 4 words. "Copy, Ghost," came the replies. "Drivers, medics, escorts." Short, trusting. A strange thing happened in that moment. The more my father tried to erase me from the system, the more the people on the net used my call sign like it was a lifeline. Because in a crisis, rank mattered less than competence. The last convoy icon crossed the corridor boundary. The status changed to clear. I let my lungs release a breath I hadn't noticed I was holding. "Leader," I said, "you did it. Close your gate." 7 words. His voice came through, rough with emotion he couldn't afford to show his men. "We close," he said. 2 words. "Thank you," I replied. 2 words. The channel went quiet except for the hiss of static and the distant sound of engines. Klein slapped the back of his own neck once, a nervous habit. "Casualties avoided," he muttered. 2 words and a prayer. I slid the headset off slowly. My hands were steady. My heart was steady. My access panel flashed a warning again. Account suspended. Pending review. My father's signature had done its work. I stared at the screen, the warning box stark under fluorescent glare, and felt a calm kind of rage settle into place. Not hot, not loud. Useful. Klein leaned down beside me. "We log everything," he said. 3 words. I nodded. "Full transcript," I replied. 2 words. The tech swallowed. "Ma'am, if the general, I didn't let her finish. Truth doesn't need his permission." 6 words. Klein's eyes sharpened. "He'll call this insubordination." 5 words. I kept my voice quiet. "He already called me nobody." 6 words. Klein held my gaze for a beat, then nodded once. Decision made. He motioned to the tech. "Export logs. Now!" 3 words. As the printer in the corner whirred to life, paper feeding, ink biting, my phone vibrated in my pocket. One short buzz, then another. A new message header glowed on my screen. From General A. Neves. I didn't open it yet, because I already knew what it would say. I watched the ops center continue without me. Screens updating, radios humming, bodies moving in the real world because of choices I'd made with a calm voice and a restrained hand. Then I heard the most familiar sound in my life. Slow, precise footsteps approaching from behind. Measured. Owned. I turned my head slightly. My father had entered the ops center. His uniform looked perfect under harsh light. His face looked calm. His eyes looked like a blade. "Off the headset," he said. 3 words. My father's boots made no hurry on the ops center tile. Slow, precise steps that sounded like authority on purpose. The air tasted like hot dust from overworked machines. A bank of monitors threw blue light across his face, sharpening the angles, bleaching the human out of him. Behind me, radios hissed low, the after sound of a crisis settling back into routine. "Off the headset," he said. 3 words. Not a request. I had already removed it, but he needed the room to see him command my body anyway. Power wasn't about outcomes to him. It was about posture. "Yes, sir," I said. 2 words. Flat, controlled. His eyes flicked to my workstation where the warning box still glowed. Account suspended, pending review. He looked satisfied, like a man watching a gate lock exactly when he wanted it locked. Klein stood 2 steps behind him, shoulders squared, jaw tight. The printer in the corner still held warm paper, fresh logs, edges curling slightly in the heat. My father followed my gaze and saw the stack. "What's that?" he asked. 2 words, sharp. "Transcript," Klein said. 1 word. My father's mouth tightened. "Hand it over." 3 words. Klein didn't move. The ops center went quieter in a way that felt dangerous. Even the techs stopped tapping keys. The only sound was the steady whir of a cooling fan and the faint crackle of a radio someone had forgotten to mute. My father looked at me, not at Klein. "Tell him," he said. 2 words. A leash again. I kept my voice low. "It's mission record." 3 words. He stepped closer, and I caught the scent of his cologne under the sterile air. Mint and something expensive, something meant to signal control. His voice softened into the kind of calm that bruised without noise. "You're done here," he said. 4 words. "The corridor was still open," I replied. 5 words. His nostrils flared. He didn't like facts that didn't kneel. "You disobeyed," he said. 2 words. "I delivered," I said. 2 words. Klein exhaled through his nose, a restrained sound like he was swallowing a curse. My father noticed the reaction and turned it into a weapon. "See?" he said to the room. "Undisciplined." 2 words, then 1. Nobody agreed out loud. Nobody disagreed either. In rooms like this, people waited for rank to tell them what truth was allowed to be. My father's gaze slid back to the printed logs. "Those are classified," he said. 3 words. Klein finally moved, not forward, not aggressive, just enough to place his hand over the stack like a lid. "Then file them," he said. 2 words. My father's eyes narrowed. "Now." 1 word, mini-turn. A new sound cut into the tension. A chime from the main operations screen. An incoming secure conference request. The notification bloomed across the display like a flare. After-action hot wash. Joint. Civil leaders. Starting now. The ops center shifted instantly. People reached for headsets. Chairs rolled. A colonel at the far desk snapped to attention without realizing it. My father turned toward the big screen like it had been waiting to rescue him. "Good," he said. "I'll brief." 3 words. Klein's eyes flashed. He looked at me once, quick, sharp, asking without asking if I wanted to fight. I didn't. I looked at the screen and let my silence be my plan. The truth didn't need my volume. It needed the right room. My father took the central position at the console as if the building belonged to him. A tech routed audio. Faces began populating the conference grid. A civilian coordinator in a suit, a regional commander, an agency rep with tired eyes, someone from the field with dust still on their collar. The lighting on their feeds was uneven. My father's was perfect. He liked it that way. "We're live," the tech whispered. My father's expression warmed into professionalism. He didn't glance at me. He didn't have to. In his mind, I was already erased. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, voice smooth, "we successfully reopened the corridor." 7 words, clean. Ownership implied. A few heads nodded on screen. Someone said, "Good work, General." My stomach stayed calm. This was the moment he always lived for, a room that applauded the storyteller, not the laborer. Then the civilian coordinator leaned forward. "General," she said, "we heard a call sign on the net." My father's smile tightened a fraction. "You did," he said. "2 words." "What was it?" she asked. 3 words. My father didn't blink. "Ghost," he answered. 1 word, like it meant nothing. "And Ghost coordinated the movement?" the coordinator asked. 5 words. "Yes," my father said. "My team." 2 words. Then 1. Klein's hand flexed at his side. A field feed crackled, and a new face appeared. Grainy camera, harsh daylight, wind noise leaking through a mic. It was the local leader from the corridor, shoulders squared, eyes tired, pride still intact. He looked straight into the lens like he'd learned where dignity lived. "Ghost," he said into the conference, voice rough. "Thank you." 2 words, then 1. The grid went quiet for a beat. Gratitude did something rank couldn't. It moved rooms. My father's jaw tightened, but he kept his smile. "We appreciate your cooperation," he said. 4 words. The leader's eyes narrowed. "Not you," he said. 2 words. A small, involuntary silence spread across the conference. Not disrespect, clarity. "I'm thanking Ghost," the leader repeated. 3 words. My father's voice sharpened slightly. "Ghost is an asset," he said. 4 words. The leader shook his head once. "Ghost is a woman," he said. 4 words. The ops center froze so hard the air felt brittle. My father's eyes flicked, just once, toward me, then away, like looking directly at the truth might burn him. The civilian coordinator swallowed. "General?" she asked carefully. "Who is Ghost?" 5 words. My father's tone went colder. "Not relevant," he said. 2 words, mini turn. Klein stepped forward 1 pace, just enough to enter the camera's peripheral view. He didn't shove, he didn't grandstand. He held the printed transcript at chest height like it weighed nothing. "Relevant," he said. 1 word. My father's head snapped. "Sergeant." 1 word meant to cut. "Master Sergeant," Klein corrected. 2 words. The correction wasn't about ego. It was about boundaries, small lines drawn in rooms where big people tried to erase others. My father's eyes flared. "Stand down." 2 words. Klein didn't. He turned slightly toward the tech at the console. "Play the clip," he said. 3 words. The tech hesitated, eyes wide, then looked at my father. My father's voice became silk over steel. "Do not." 2 words. The tech's fingers hovered above the keys, trembling. Klein's gaze didn't leave the tech. "Log it," he said. 2 words, a pause. Then the tech made a choice. Audio flooded the conference, cleaner than memory, sharper than rumor. My voice filled the room. "Walk slow, talk loud." 6 words, calm as breath. The leader's voice answered, rough and steady. "Ghost," 1 word. My voice again, small and certain. "Yeah," 1 word, then, "You're doing right. Keep pace." 6 words. The clip ended. The conference grid went still, not polite still, a kind of stillness that made everyone aware of their own heartbeat. My father stared at the console like the screen had betrayed him. The coordinator spoke first, voice quiet. "That was Major Neves?" 5 words. My father's lips parted. No sound came out. He had called me a nobody in public. Now my calm voice sat inside the official record like a signature he couldn't scratch out. Klein held the transcript higher, and the camera caught the header line as the paper trembled slightly in the ops center heat. Call sign, Ghost, primary voice, MLJ, Maya Neves. The leader on the field feed nodded once, satisfied. "She kept us alive," he said. 4 words. The room stayed silent, conference and ops center both, like nobody wanted to be the first person to move after the truth landed. Then, inside the ops center, one young captain stood up from his chair. No speech, just the scrape of chair legs on tile. He faced me and raised his hand in a clean, formal salute. Salute. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't loud. It was a body making a decision. Another enlisted soldier followed, then another. A quiet chain reaction, palms rising to brows, posture straightening, respect traveling through the room without permission. My father watched it happen like he was watching his own story being rewritten in ink he couldn't control. He turned back toward the console, voice tight. "This is inappropriate." 3 words. No one answered him. The coordinator's voice came through softly, almost reverent. "Major," she said. "Thank you." 3 words. I kept my face composed. I didn't look at my father. I didn't smile at the salutes. I didn't drink the moment. I spoke into the conference mic once, and my line stayed small enough to be true. Lives moved. That was the point. 6 words. Then I sat back, letting silence carry the rest. My father's eyes burned into my profile, and I could feel his need for control clawing at the air. He leaned toward me low enough that only I could hear, his voice a private blade again. "This ends now," he whispered. 3 words. I didn't flinch, because I finally understood. He couldn't erase my voice anymore. The room had already heard it. The salutes didn't look loud, but they sounded loud. Boot heels clicked together, sleeves brushed fabric. A dozen hands rose in clean angles under the harsh blue glow of the monitors, and the ops center, usually a hive of noise, held a silence that felt like a verdict. My father stood in the middle of it, with his shoulders squared and his face arranged into command calm, but his eyes kept darting the way a man's eyes darted when he realized the room no longer belonged to him. On the big screen, the conference grid stayed frozen for a beat. Tired civilian faces, dusty field feeds, someone's office lamp throwing warm light across paperwork. The coordinator's lips parted as if she wanted to say something more, then she didn't. The truth had already said enough. My father reached for the console mic like it was a lifeline. "End the call," he said. 3 words. The tech's fingers hovered, trembling, then pressed the disconnect. The grid vanished. The screen went dark for half a second, then filled with the familiar ops layout again. Maps, status bars, timers. The room exhaled, small and careful. My father turned to me. "This ends now," he repeated, quieter. 3 words. Still a threat. I kept my face composed. "The corridor is clear." 5 words. His nostrils flared. "Not what I meant." 4 words. Klein stayed to my left, shoulders tight, eyes steady. The printed transcript sat in his hand like a shield made of paper. My father's gaze flicked to that stack. "Give me that." 3 words. Klein didn't move. My father's voice sharpened. "That's an order." 3 words. Klein finally spoke, calm and clipped. "File it through channels." 4 words. My father's jaw flexed, anger pressing against the limits of his own professionalism. He couldn't shout in this room, not after the salutes, not after the clip, not after witnesses had heard my voice save a corridor. So he did what he always did when he couldn't dominate with volume. He tried to dominate with paperwork. He pointed at my workstation where the warning box still glowed. "Account suspended. Pending review." "You're suspended," he said. 2 words. I nodded once. "From the console." 3 words. He leaned in, eyes hard. "From the mission." 3 words. I didn't flinch. "The mission moved." 3 words. A faint radio hiss broke the silence. Someone on another net asking for confirmation. The ops center kept working around us like water flowing around a stone. My father turned toward the room, reclaiming audience. "Return to tasks," he said. 3 words. People obeyed, but their eyes kept sliding back to him. Careful, wary. Respect didn't vanish. Something else had entered it. Recognition. He faced me again and lowered his voice to the private blade he always saved for family. "You embarrassed me," he said. 3 words. I kept my answer small. "You did that." 3 words. He went still. I saw the exact moment he decided kindness was no longer useful. "You'll apologize," he said. 2 words. I shook my head once. Well, no, sir. 2 words. His mouth tightened. You'll be charged. 3 words. Klein inhaled sharply, then controlled it. I didn't look away. For what? 2 words. My father smiled without warmth. Insubordination. 1 word. Mini-turn. A colonel from the far side of the ops floor approached, slow, deliberate, holding a tablet to his chest. He looked like a man who hated conflict but respected facts. General, the colonel said carefully, J39 already pulled the logs. 7 words. My father's head snapped. What? 1 word. The colonel swallowed. Auto export, he added. Triggered by the hot wash. 6 words. My father stared as if the building itself had betrayed him. He had tried to control the record with his signature, but the system had already made copies. Quiet, automatic, indifferent to family names. Klein's voice stayed level. It's filed. 3 words. My father's eyes flashed. By who? 2 words. Klein didn't smile. By the mission. 3 words. My father looked at me again, and something in his expression shifted. Less rage, more calculation. He couldn't erase what was already filed. So he reached for the next lever he always used when he wanted to make me small. My mother. He leaned closer, voice soft enough to be almost tender. Helen's health. 2 words. A warning disguised as concern. My chest tightened once. I didn't let it show. She's fine, I said. 2 words. My father's smile sharpened. You sure? 2 words. I held his gaze and answered with a line that didn't give him a hook. Don't use her. 3 words. His eyes hardened. She's my wife. 3 words. And she's my mother, I replied. 4 words. He flinched just slightly at the possessive truth. He straightened, letting the room see him regain posture. Major Neves, he said loudly, you're dismissed. 4 words. Dismissed, as if he could send me out of existence with a sentence. I rose slowly anyway, chair legs scraping once on tile. Klein stepped with me, matching pace without making it a scene. My father added low and poisonous as I passed. You'll regret this. 3 words. I didn't stop walking. I won't forget it. 4 words. We left the ops center under fluorescent glare that made every hallway feel colder. The air smelled like floor wax and metal. My boots hit tile with steady rhythm, and each step felt like an exhale I'd been holding for years. Behind us, the ops floor noise returned. Radios, keyboards, clipped voices, life continuing in spite of a general's bruised ego. Klein didn't speak until we reached a quiet side corridor where the hum of the building softened. He handed me a slim drive and a clear evidence sleeve. The plastic felt cold against my palm. Back up, he said. 1 word. I nodded. Thank you. 2 words. He hesitated, then asked the question everyone was thinking. What now? 2 words. I kept my voice controlled. I keep working. 3 words. He frowned slightly. He'll block you. 3 words. He can block access, I said. Not outcomes. 6 words. Klein's mouth tightened in approval. He'll come for your career. 5 words. I glanced at the evidence sleeve, then back at him. He already did. 4 words. Klein exhaled through his nose, then nodded once. Decision set. I'll stand in record, he said. 4 words. I didn't ask you to, I replied. 5 words. He held my gaze. I know. 2 words. That was the difference between loyalty and worship. Worship protected rank. Loyalty protected truth. We walked again, past locked doors, past framed photos of commanders smiling beside flags, past posters about integrity that always looked cleanest on walls. My phone buzzed once in my pocket. 1 short vibration, then still. A message from an unknown number. I opened it anyway. Maya, call me, it's Mom. The text looked small on the screen. The words felt heavy in my hand. I stepped into an empty conference room and shut the door softly behind me. The room smelled like stale air and dry marker. A single desk lamp cast a yellow circle on the table, warmer than the hallway's harsh light. I called. My mother answered on the first ring, breath already shaky. Maya? One word, my name, not a leash, an anchor. I'm here, I said. Two words, a pause. Then her voice, thin and controlled, like she was trying not to crack. He came home. Three words. My jaw tightened once. Is he yelling? Three words. No, she whispered. He's quiet. Three words, worse. I closed my eyes for a beat, feeling the old fear try to rise. The fear that my father's quiet meant a plan. My mother spoke again. He said you humiliated him. 6 words. I didn't, I replied. He did. 4 words. Her breath hitched. He said you turned people. 5 words. I didn't turn them, I said. They listened. 4 words. A long pause filled with faint household sounds on her end. Silverware shifting, a faucet drip, the distant low hum of a television left on mute. Ordinary life trying to survive in a house with a storm inside. My mother's voice dropped. He wants you to apologize. 5 words. I stared at the desk lamp's warm circle and felt something settle in me, calm, firm, final. I won't. 2 words. My mother didn't argue. That's what scared me most. Okay, she whispered. 1 word, acceptance, mini-turn. Then she added, almost inaudible. He said he'll change your file. 7 words. Cold ran down my spine, not panic, clarity. He can try, I said. 3 words. My mother's breath shook. He still thinks he owns you. 6 words. I kept my voice gentle. He owns a signature. 3 words. And you? She asked. 2 words. The question she'd never dared to ask out loud before. I answered softly. I own my work. 4 words. Silence on the line, thick, trembling. Then my mother exhaled a sound that was half relief, half grief. I heard your voice, she said. 4 words. In the clip, she added quickly, as if admitting that was dangerous. Someone sent it. 6 words. My throat tightened once. Are you okay? 4 words. She paused. I'm awake. 2 words. A confession. I understood that, waking up hurt. My mother's voice steadied slightly. He called you a nobody. 5 words. I stared at the evidence sleeve in my hand. He was wrong. 3 words. A quiet sound came from her end, like she'd pressed her hand over her mouth. They saluted you. 4 words, incredulous. I didn't brag. They saluted the record. 4 words. My mother went silent again, then whispered, I'm proud. 3 words. The sentence didn't land like fireworks. It landed like something I'd stopped expecting and didn't know where to put. I didn't let it turn into a moment my father could steal later. I kept it simple. Thank you, Mom. 3 words. On her end, a floorboard creaked. Another presence in the house. My mother's breath changed. He's here, she whispered. 2 words. I didn't ask her to fight him. I didn't ask her to choose me in a way that would break her. I gave her the only instruction that preserved both of us. Stay safe. 2 words. I will, she said. 2 words. Quiet courage. The call ended. I stared at the black screen of my phone for a beat, listening to the empty conference room's silence. The building hummed around me. Air vents, distant footsteps, a door closing somewhere down the hall. The world stayed indifferent, steady. I stood and walked toward my office. Inside my desk was clean. A stack of folders waited. The scent of paper and toner hit me, familiar, grounding. On the wall, my nameplate caught the desk lamp's light. M.A.J. Maya Neves. Same letters my father thought he could diminish. I pulled a blank memo form from the drawer and began to write. Not an emotional letter, not a complaint. A record. Subject: corridor de-escalation. Voice transcript. Preservation request. Action: secure log retention. Reference: J39 tasking. My pen scratched steadily, the sound quiet and certain. When I finished, I signed the bottom with the name my father tried to own, Maya Neves. Then beneath it, smaller, almost like a private truth, I wrote the call sign the net had used when it mattered. Ghost. The ink dried matte under the lamp. Outside my door, I heard measured footsteps in the hallway. Slow, precise, owned. A knock landed. Firm, controlled, like a gavel on wood. And my father's voice followed, calm as a threat. Open the door! The knock landed again, firm, measured, and the wood of my office door vibrated softly, as if the building itself knew whose rhythm that was. The hallway light spilled under the door in a thin, pale strip. My desk lamp cast a warmer circle over my memo, the ink still fresh enough to shine. The air smelled like toner and floor wax, and the silence in the room felt heavier than any yelling ever had. Open the door, my father said. 3 words. Clean. Owned. I didn't rush. I capped my pen slowly. I slid the evidence sleeve from Klein into the top drawer, the plastic whispering against paper. Then I stood and walked to the door with my spine straight and my face calm. No drama, no trembling. I opened it. General Arthur Neves filled the doorway like he was designed for thresholds. Perfect uniform, perfect posture, perfect composure. The fluorescent hallway light flattened his face into angles, but his eyes still carried that private blade I'd known since childhood. He stepped in without waiting for permission. My office suddenly felt smaller. The hum of the air vent sounded louder. The carpet muffled his boots in a way that made his control feel even more deliberate, quiet force, no friction. He shut the door behind him. Not hard, just final. You went around me, he said. 4 words, accusation dressed as fact. I kept my voice even. I went through channels. 4 words, his mouth tightened. You embarrassed me. 3 words, familiar. I didn't flinch. You did that. 3 words. His nostrils flared, a small crack in the mask. He moved closer, stopping at my desk like it was his podium now. His gaze dropped to the memo I'd written, preservation request, and his lips pressed into a thin line. He tapped the paper once with his index finger. This is insubordination, he said. 3 words. I met his eyes, calm. It's documentation. 2 words. He leaned in, voice softening into something meant to make me feel small without witnesses. You're my daughter. 4 words. The sentence used to pull me backward. Tonight it only clarified the problem. I'm your officer, I replied. 3 words. The air between us tightened. My desk lamp warmed the edge of my sleeve. The rest of the room stayed cold. He stared at me for a beat, then shifted tactics, the way he always did when one lever failed. Apologize, he said. 1 word. I shook my head once. Chui. No. 1 word. His eyes hardened. Then you'll be removed. 5 words. He kept them short because he liked cuts you could repeat. From what? I asked. 2 words. He smiled without warmth. Everything that matters. 3 words, cruel, specific. The old part of me, teenage Maya, wanted to answer with anger. Wanted to list deployments, hours, lives moved, corridors opened. Wanted to force him to see me. But I had learned something the night had already proven. Truth didn't need his eyes to exist. So I stayed controlled. The record already exists, I said. 5 words. His jaw flexed. Records can change. 3 words. My throat tightened once, then eased. Not the ones exported. 4 words. That hit him. I saw it. A micropause, his mind recalculating. He had assumed he could crush this with a signature and a threat. He hadn't expected the system to have teeth. He stepped around my desk, slow, predatory, and stopped close enough that I could smell mint on his breath again. "You think you won," he whispered. 4 words. I answered softly, reality anchored. "I think people lived." 4 words. For a moment, he looked almost offended by how small my answer was, like I'd refused the grand theater he'd prepared for. Then his voice sharpened. "Your mother is frightened." 4 words. He said it like it was my fault. I felt the old reflex flare. Protect her, fix it, soften it. I didn't let it take me. "Don't use her," I said. 3 words. His eyes narrowed. "She chose me." 3 words, another attempt to cage me with history. I kept my tone steady. "She chose survival." 3 words. That one landed. His face tightened, and for the first time I saw something like uncertainty, because he knew it was true. He had built a home where peace meant obedience, and he had called it love. He looked at my nameplate on the desk, M.A.J., Maya Nevis, and spoke with quiet contempt. "You'll always be my shadow," he said. 5 words. Symbolic motive revealed. He needed me diminished, attached, owned. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't posture. I just gave him a line he couldn't rewrite. "I'm not in your light," I said. 5 words. Silence spread. The air vent whispered. Somewhere in the hallway, a door closed softly. The building kept breathing. My father straightened, recovering posture like it was armor. "Pack your things," he said. 3 words. "I already did," I replied. 3 words. That surprised him, just a flicker. He liked to believe removal was something he initiated, something he controlled. He didn't like the idea that I'd been preparing quietly while he was still thinking the door belonged to him. He scoffed once, small. "Where will you go?" 4 words, more challenge than question. I answered with the simplest truth. "Back to work." 3 words. He shook his head, but "Not here." 2 words. "No," I agreed. 1 word. That was the closest we'd ever come to honesty. I wasn't fighting to stay under his shadow anymore. Mini turn. My father's phone vibrated in his pocket, one sharp buzz, then another. He glanced down, irritation flashing, then answered with practiced calm. "Nevs," he said. 1 word. His eyes slid to me as he listened. The muscles in his jaw tightened. He turned slightly away, but not enough to hide the conversation. "Yes," he said. "I'm aware." 2 words, a pause. His face stiffened. "I will not." 4 words, then he stopped. He listened again, and in that listening, something changed. Not in his heart, his calculus. He ended the call abruptly and slid the phone back into his pocket like it burned. "Who?" I asked quietly. 1 word. He didn't answer immediately. His pride wrestled his need for control. Then he said it like it hurt him to say it out loud. "Inspector General," he snapped. 2 words. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I felt only a clean, quiet relief that the system had a spine even when families didn't. Klein hadn't just backed up the logs. He'd triggered accountability. My father's gaze cut back to me. "Did you do that?" 4 words. I held his eyes. "I wrote a record." 4 words. He stepped closer again, voice lowering. "You're making enemies." 3 words. I replied softly. "I'm making truth." 3 words. His mouth tightened. He looked suddenly older, not because he'd aged, but because his control had met a wall it couldn't charm. He turned toward the door as if leaving on his terms, then paused with his hand on the knob. Without looking back, he delivered one last cut, short, specific. "You'll lose your family," he said. 4 words. I answered with the calm, reframing line that had been forming in me all night. "Honor doesn't require your approval," I said. 5 words. His hand froze on the knob for a beat, like the past could bite. Then he opened the door and walked out. The hallway light flooded in, cold and unromantic. His boots retreated with the same measured rhythm, but the sound didn't carry power anymore. It carried absence. When the door shut, the silence in my office didn't feel like a cage. It felt like space. I sat down slowly and looked at the memo again. My signature sat at the bottom. Clean ink, calm hand. Beneath it, the call sign I'd written smaller. Ghost. The word looked simple, almost gentle for how much it had just changed. Mini-turn. My phone buzzed on the desk. A message from my mother. I'm okay. I didn't speak. I stayed. I stared at it until my chest loosened. I typed back without overpromising, without feeding fear. Good, lock your door. Sleep. 5 words. Then I stood, turned off my desk lamp, and let the room go dark. The hallway light still leaked under the door, but it didn't feel like surveillance anymore. It felt like a path. I walked out with a single duffel over my shoulder, the strap biting lightly into my palm. The corridor smelled like floor wax and cold air. My boots made soft, steady sounds on tile. As I passed the ops center, I heard the building's working heartbeat. Radio chatter, keyboard taps, a low murmur of coordination. The mission had moved on, indifferent to who tried to own it. Klein stood near the doorway like he'd been waiting. He didn't salute this time. He just looked at me with quiet respect. They're assigning you forward, he said. 4 words. I nodded once. Good. 1 word. He hesitated. You sure? 2 words. I answered with the smallest truth that held everything. I'm done being erased, I said. 5 words. Outside, the night air hit my face cold and clean. The base lights cast hard white pools on the pavement. Somewhere, a flag rope tapped against metal. Small, persistent. I walked to my car, started the engine, and drove toward the gate. The guard waved me through without comment. The barrier lifted. The world opened. On the road, the darkness ahead didn't feel threatening. It felt honest. No spotlight, no podium, no father controlling the story. Just my own hands on the wheel. Just my own work waiting. And somewhere behind me, a man with 3 stars finally learned what he'd refused to believe. Some people lose their voice when the truth speaks for itself. Honor doesn't argue.